We're back, and we're going to talk about local hockey like we just said. Bobcats, and we'll start off with the Junior A team. What do you think of this, guys? Now, we'll rewind back to January 10th. They made a few deals, or the day before. They made a few deals involving a couple local products who got shipped out. A lot of fans were not happy, and there were also rumblings of even the coaches hearing it from the fans as well throughout the city. A week and a half has passed. If you look at their record, they're 2-2-1 since those trades. Is this a team that is still capable of making a run now? We know next year, we understand what's at stake. They're building for that year. The team's going to be very good. But I mean, right now, is this team good enough to make a good playoff push?
Well, with all due respect to the coaches, no, they're not. Without those guys, to have that veteran leadership, to have your guys that you're going to rely on the power play and the PK and your leader on the back end, they're not good enough. But that's okay. I said to a lot of people when that happened on the 8th and the 9th, I give Gord and Gary absolute credit for having the stones to pull that off, because it's not about this year. Let's have a good run this year, and I still think they're going to be second round. Maybe they'll even sneak into the North Final. But at the end of the day, they're not going to go 7 games with Spruce, or if they get to Camrose, or if they get to even now Brooks. It's not going to happen. And that's not what it's about. Next year is the year to make it happen.
Yeah, you don't replace Springer, you don't replace Bench with what you're getting in those trades. Not now. But it's the futures in both those deals that it's going to be very important come next year when you host the RBC. And I've said this before, you want to win this year, but you have to win next year. Because the road to the RBC is such a tough one to get there, and it's a battle now. And back in the day, you used to win the league, play against BC, and then win that series and go off. Now you win the league, then you go to the Western Canadian Cup, and then you go to the RBC. So and playing a 7-game series is different than playing a tournament style. Trust me. Like a 7-game series, it's a battle, and it's hard to win those battles, and then it's even harder to win it in a tournament format. So I can understand the fans. They buy their tickets. They have the right to complain. But we have hockey people in place, the Bobcats do, and Gord Thibodeau, Gary Van Herway have been doing it for a long time. Give them a break. They know what they're doing.
So it's more so just relaxed for the fans out there.
Relax, settle down. I know Springer's a local, Bench is semi-local. I don't necessarily agree with Bench going to Spruce Grove. Don't like that, but that's probably the best deal that was got to get on the table for him. So just relax. Gord and Gary know what they're doing.
It's still a good team.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're still a good hockey team, and they've got a chance. They've got just as good a chance as anybody. They're going to be in a good playoff position heading in. Who knows? Goalie gets hot, they go on a run. I mean, they've got some skill to do it. I really hope that they can, and I'll be one of the guys there to cheer them on, because for sure they go through a few rounds and get some experience, and that's going to bode very well for next year and down the road past that.
Yeah, and Devin Greener's done well enough where, like you said, if goalie gets hot at the right time, you never know what can happen.
If Greener goes into a series, like a Spruce Grove, for example, and he wins 2 games, that's huge. He wins 1 game in a 7-game series, that's big. So if your goalie can steal you a win in any playoff series, that's important, and he's a guy that could.
Okay, how about this? We saw the night after those trades, Lucas Bench being one of those players with Spruce Grove. They just so happened to play them at the Civic Center. Bench had an assist, got a warm applause from the crowd, of course, the hard work he did as a member of the Bobcat. What about Lyndon Springer? What type of reception will he receive, and do you expect him to have a big game Friday?
Well, I think he's going to get a great reception, and he should. I mean, Lyndon has given a lot to be the face of the team for the last 2.5, 3 years. He deserves a standing ovation. He's a good kid. He's been great in the community, and he's worked his tail off out on the ice. I hope for Brooks' sake that he has a monster game, because he hasn't had any since he's been there. He's chucking donuts across the board so far. So, I mean, I'm sure Brooks is thinking, okay, this might be the game to get him going, because they're going to need him down the stretch.
Yeah, it's an adjustment period for Lyndon too, and Brooks' new organization. His role kind of changes in Brooks than it was here in Lloyd. Yeah, I expect a big game for Linden here, and I think the fans will respond to him. He's a great local kid, great in hockey, baseball player too in town, so he's got connections throughout the Lloyd, and the community really likes him.
Yeah, how about the Baker Hughes Bobcats? Remember, this was a team last year, mostly comprised right now in terms of the Bobcats, but a team that was comprised of the Bantam AAA Heat, a team that was one win away from Western Canadians. You look at them now, they're starting to play like that team they were when they were at Bantams. Can they make a serious run at the midget AAA level with Baker Hughes and perhaps maybe take that next step going to that national title?
I think they're going to be in a little bit tougher. I mean, it's going to come down to the next few weeks. They've got some tough games. They've got the top teams from Calgary that they still have to face. They have a huge game coming up with St. Albert, who's ahead of them in the standings. They need to get into that 1-2 spot in the North to have that first round bye. I think as young as that team is, they're going to have a hard time going through that extra series, because they're going to be playing against guys that really are 2 years older as they get moving on. So, who knows? I mean, it's the same, the same thing. If they get hot, if those young guys, I mean, the talent they have, if the Franklins and the Leslies decide to start lighting it up and Morris starts burying them from the slot like he does, well, they could go. And you got to give a lot of credit to their coach, Travis Clayton. He's been with them for a couple of years. I mean, if anybody's going to get those kids rolling for the playoffs, he knows how they tick, and they could have a heck of a run.
The early part of the season, and with the young team, is staying consistent and having a good game after a good game after a good game. And in the early part of the season, they weren't doing that. They would have a good game, they would have a bad game, then another couple of good games, then a bad game. But lately here, since Christmas, they've been more consistent, and that is a team that's finding, I guess, their own, more than anything, finding exactly where they are in the league. And a young team that's finding their own kind of groove and really mixing and matching well with the veterans they already have in that team.
Okay, very quickly, we're going to move on to the Washington Nationals. Huge coup for them. Max Scherzer, one of the most prized pitchers right now in free agency, signed a 7-year deal with the club. Arguably making that rotation probably one of the best in baseball as we speak. Is this a team that's a front runner for the World Series?
I think they're definitely one of the top teams, but are they going to be a front runner in September if they don't let Strasburg pitch? That's probably, to me, the bigger question is, are you going to let this kid throw more than 200 plus innings? Because I'll be sure that they're going to let Scherzer throw that many.
Strasburg has got an increase. He's definitely had an increase over the last.
Oh, for sure, they keep increasing him, but are they going to give him enough to push them as they go? I mean, their best scenario would be to absolutely run away with the division. Park a few guys and then let them go. But in terms of on paper, for sure, they're the top team there. Too much offense, and that starting rotation will be able to carry them a long way. Yeah,
and I think that starting rotation, like any other team in baseball, if you're starting a rotation and you have good closers, it's going to take you a long way. I think that takes you even further if you have great offense. Because you've seen some of the great teams. Saw San Francisco this year, how strong their pitching staff was, and they basically nickel and dimed it on given days, but they got wins. And I think that's what Washington's going to do.
We're going to take a commercial break, and when we return, we'll have more Gloves Are Off. Over Under is next.